Happy Monday, and welcome back to the Lorden Arts channel. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for spending some time with us here today. Case Cracked is the show where we look into a mystery, and what are the critical pieces that help solve that mystery. Today's episode is called Scrapbooks and Bad Memories. Many great minds have come from Hamburg, Germany. From the current Chancellor of Germany to fashion designers, sports figures, and groundbreaking scientists, even the literal city has been recognized as being smart, with Cisco's chief globalization officer, Wim Elfrink, saying that Hamburg is emerging as one of the world's smart city showcases. One of those great minds was Uta von Schwelder. Uta was born on April 13, 1962, the eldest of four sisters. She would follow in her father's footsteps, who was a doctor, studying in Bonn and Gießen. She was then given the opportunity to continue her education and live in California in the United States, where she worked and examined the AIDS pathogen HIV. Even though she always spoke her mind, everyone loved Uta. She had a passion for life and work that kept everyone on their toes. She also enjoyed taking friends to dance performances, concerts, or plays. While in graduate school, she was introduced to Johnny Wall by a friend. Johnny was working towards his doctorate to become a pediatrician. The two seemed to click and soon became a couple. Uta graduated in 1987, and by 1990, she and Johnny were married. A few years later, they welcomed their first son, Pele, and eventually would become a six-person family. In 1994, both Uta and Johnny were given the chance to move to Utah, where they would work at the University of Utah Medical Center. Johnny worked as a resident in pediatrics, and Uta worked as a research scientist studying HIV, as well as childhood leukemia. One of the specialist articles that she wrote is still considered a landmark in research today. Uta continued excelling in both her personal life and profession. With her love of the outdoors, she was always pushing her family to go camping or hiking, and she used the same energy at work, where colleagues called her a combination of a soccer mom and a working mom. She would run from the lab home on her bike, get into the car and drive the kids to a soccer game, run back, take another kid to wherever they needed. As the years wore on and the children grew older, small disagreements turned into big trouble for the couple as their marriage began to fall apart. In 2006, Uta had enough and left Johnny along with her four children. The divorce was bitter and full of accusations, as Johnny accused Uta of being unfaithful to him. He claimed she was having an affair with a scientist in Germany. Other than child custody, one thing Uta and Johnny both fought hard for were the family's scrapbooks. Uta had meticulously made these mementos from the pictures Johnny constantly took on trips or during their everyday life. She would stay up late at night, organizing them and trying to remember everything she could about that day so she could write notes under the pictures. In their divorce, the judge ruled that the albums would be joint property of both parties. Uta walked away with four of them, each one specific to one of their children. Uta continued with the large family outings. On September 25, 2011, the family, along with other relatives and friends, were on yet another camping trip to the mountains near Salt Lake City. Soon after this picture was taken, they all returned to the city to start the work week. But it wouldn't be just any work week. On the afternoon of Tuesday, September 27, 2011, Uta's boyfriend, Nils Abramson, came by to spend time with her while the children were with Johnny. When he came up to her home, he noticed that her garbage cans were still on the road after pickup. Her newspaper was still laying in the driveway, and her front door was unlocked. As he entered, he could hear water running in the bathroom. Thinking Uta was taking a bath, he quietly knocked on the door and called out to her. When he entered, he was shocked to see Uta under the water in the bathtub, wearing only a pair of shorts. There was also a splotch of blood on the side of the tub. He thought maybe she had slipped and hit her head. When he reached to pull her from the water, he found Uta was cold and stiff. He knew she was dead. Police arrived and immediately started processing the scene. No one could understand how a successful, vibrant 48-year-old could drown in her own bathtub. No signs of a break-in could be found, and no items were missing from the home. Investigators noticed more blood around the house. Some was in the kitchen, some was in the bedroom, and then, of course, the stain that Nils saw when he first found Uda in the bathroom. There was no corroborating mark on her head to support the slip and fall theory, and that theory would be far less likely with their next discovery. When the water was drained from the tub, under Uda, they found a small knife at her feet and her daughter, Ilona's scrapbook. Nils was the first to be questioned. After taking his statement, he was asked if Uda had any enemies, to which he replied, yes, her ex-husband. Nils was cleared, and officers soon found Johnny and brought him to the police station. Investigators noticed two things immediately. One was that Johnny had scratches on both forearms, and second, his eye had suffered quite an injury. He was told that his ex-wife was dead, to which he seemed shocked. He stated that she was fine when he picked up the children from her home at 8 p.m. on Monday night. When he was asked about his injuries, he claimed that he had been asleep one night and woke up to his dog standing over him, which left him with scratches and the eye injury. Investigators took photos of those wounds. When Uda's autopsy was performed and completed 6 weeks later, the medical examiner's report would only confuse investigators more. Bruising was found on her lip and neck, as well as cuts to her wrist and leg, none of which would have been fatal. Most telling was her toxicology report. Uda had twice the therapeutic level of the anti-anxiety drug Xanax in her system. It was believed that the amount would at least make her drowsy, possibly even cause unconsciousness, making it easy to drown in a bathtub. Surprisingly, the medical examiner found no pills in her stomach, leading him to believe that she had been injected by a needle. He didn't look for an injection site, but stated that the injuries to her could have obscured one. Her time of death was set at 10:30 p.m. the night before she was found, and her cause of death was listed as drowning, but marked undetermined. Her boyfriend Nils was questioned again, this time to see if Uda had shown any signs of depression or if she had taken antidepressants. He said that no, she had never seemed depressed to him. She used exercise and the outdoors as her therapy. Her doctor stated that during her divorce, she had prescribed Uda a sleeping pill and an anti-anxiety drug that she only took for 4 days before she stopped, saying that she didn't like the side effects. Investigators also found a prescription where her ex-husband, Johnny Wall, had written a Xanax prescription supposedly for his mother. When he was asked about it, he said that the prescription had been picked up but gotten rid of. Wall's mother said she didn't recall ever receiving any of that drug. When Uda and Johnny's friends were questioned, they showed a grim view of Johnny Wall. They said he constantly talked about how his wife was ruining his life, even telling one friend it would be all right if Uda wasn't around anymore. The divorce and custody battle had lasted 5 years, in which time Wall remarried and divorced. He seemed to blame Uda for that as well. As her life improved with a new boyfriend and continued successes at work, Wall's life was falling apart. He used every opportunity to torture Uda with her own children. He shut off the home phone so she could no longer talk to them. He would even hold her precious scrapbooks hostage and threaten to destroy them. After her death, his behavior with his children was much worse. He rambled and mumbled about the fact that he was a suspect in her death. He would cry and ask for his mother, causing his children to comfort him. Soon after, Wall checked himself into a psychiatric hospital for treatment, leaving his oldest son to be the face of the family and take care of his siblings. Pele stated to police that his father had told him that Uda had taken her old life, but he didn't believe it. Quote, "I was absolutely 100% convinced that he was responsible for my mother's death," he said. Friends claimed that Uda was nothing but upbeat on their last conversations and had planned outings with a few of them. She had also been granted a child custody reevaluation just before her death that could have potentially given her full custody of the children. One of her co-workers claimed that recently Uda had made a major breakthrough involving the genetics of childhood leukemia and was to meet with her boss to discuss it. In January of 2012, Pele finally turned 18, packed his bags, and left. He then took his father to court to have the other children removed from his home. Eventually, he was successful, and the other children were sent to a family friend. His father then turned around and sued his son for none other than the scrapbooks, as well as any copies of them that had been made. Pele retaliated by filing a wrongful death suit against his father. This meant attorneys could question Johnny again about his wife's death under oath. He denied everything and also contradicted some of his earlier statements. However, without strong physical evidence, investigators didn't feel that they had a good enough case to take him to court. Over a year later, it was decided that the MVAC would be used to try to get better DNA samples. The MVAC machine is a sterile, wet vacuum that sprays a solution onto a surface, which loosens material otherwise inaccessible and collects up to 20 times more DNA than regular methods. DNA had been found under Uda's fingernails, but investigators were only able to show that it came from a male. They needed to know specifically who. A bloody pillow, comforter, and bloody glove print were tested, all of which came back to Johnny Wall. Now, with the knife wounds, the Xanax, and Johnny's own words, investigators felt they had a solid case. Finally, on April 25, 2013, Wall was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. 2 years later, in February of 2015, Wall went to court. It took all of Pele's inheritance from his mother's estate to get this far, but after 4 weeks of testimony, a jury found Wall guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to serve 15 years to life in prison. In his victim impact statement, Pele said, "The fact that my father clearly premeditated my own mother's murder, making an incomprehensible judgment that she was not fit to live, is something I'll have to carry for the rest of my life." He and his siblings miss their mother and have to deal with the feelings of a father they lost in all this as well. Pele still feels that he needs a confession for closure, but he doesn't believe his father will ever give one. He believes that the man is so wrapped up in his own lies that he now believes them. Despite everything Pele has gone through in life, he's clearly following in his mother's successful footsteps. Quote, "I got a 4.0 GPA, so I had all A's, and I was awarded academic all-state for soccer." Case cracked. I would like to thank BILD.de News, CBSNews.com, GQItalia.com, MVAC.com, SLTrib.com, Fox13Now.com, CityWeekly.net, People.com, and Desert.com. Of course, the biggest thank you goes to Christy Arnhart for researching and writing up today's case. And here she is now to discuss it with us. Christy, I know we've spoken about the MVAC not a whole lot. I would think that we would hear about it a little more here on Case Cracked, but I know not everyone is super familiar with it. Can you tell us a bit more about it?
Oh, yes. I love the MVAC. It's one of my favorite things. It is actually a wet vacuum system that was originally developed for the food industry, but the developers realized early on that with a few minor tweaks, that it would actually benefit DNA collection. Now, what they do, this is also neat. I love talking about the MVAC. So picture a handheld carpet cleaner, okay? The MVAC will actually spray, instead of spraying the cleaning solution, it sprays a DNA-free sterile fluid onto the item of interest. Now, while it's spraying, the MVAC is also vacuuming that liquid off, collecting the DNA.
Awesome. Awesome. I remember meeting with them at CrimeCon. I think the first time I met with them was at 2019. I have a very distinct memory of a conversation where they were talking about using it on a case with a rock, and that the rock it's such a porous surface that it would be really hard for traditional DNA collection methods. But because of that fluid essentially being flushed, shot at it and then taken right back up, they were able to get a much better sample.
Yes, they do. That was Crystal Beslanowicz's case, and we covered her on Case Cracked as well.
Yeah,
I got to meet them this year in Vegas at CrimeCon, and it was just incredible to see the machine, They showed how it worked. They explained every bit of it for you. It was incredible. And this thing should be used so much more than it is.
I have to say, I think that was the most excited that I saw you at CrimeCon. You were like, John, MVAC's here. I'm like, Christy, we've got Steve Wilkos right in front of us. We've got Nancy Grace over here. We've got Stephanie Harlow over. We've got Gray Hughes right next to us. She was all about the MVAC. Here's a couple photos just so you can see the excitement on her face.
Yes.
Yeah. It's really amazing that in a case like this, which this case on the circumstantial side, like, sounds pretty strong. Like, we've got him there the night before. They roll her time of death back to within a few hours of when he said he was there. But it's like they couldn't quite close the gap. And then you get an amazing new technology that gets, or newer technology that gets thrown into the mix. And all of a sudden, this case is ready for trial.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. They have got to use this thing more often. They have got to.
Yeah.
And I know Pele, he must have really appreciated their work on this case. I mean, they got what they needed because of that.
Yeah, but you know what? He has a lot to be proud of. First of all,
oh gosh, yes.
I mean, already being thrown in a situation where you're having to raise your siblings, but then him hitting 18, getting himself out, but then saying that's not good enough. I got to take care of the rest of my family in some way, at least get them out of this situation. That is amazing. And then on top of that, pressing further and saying, oh, by the way, my dad shouldn't get away with this. I mean, there's many instances where I know we look into cases and family members don't want to believe that they have a family member that could do something like this. It's really, really tough to think of someone actually holding that line and saying, right is right, wrong is wrong. You need to be held accountable for this. And then on top of that, he's literally risking his own future and his mother's name by spending all of the inheritance that came from her estate in her own name, essentially just trying to find justice for her. It's amazing.
And not just justice. I mean, how would he have lived with that money and not his siblings?
Yeah.
You know, knowing that they were in constant danger, that he could do more and he wasn't. I've got so much pride in my heart for this kid. I cannot imagine how difficult it was to come to the decisions that he did and to carry through in the way he did.
Yeah. I mean, I always say it's not one person that makes these solutions come to fruition. It's always a team. But every now and then you get someone that's like, hey, this is a really solid quarterback. This kid was the quarterback for this case. I mean, he really helped keep the focus there, brought more information. And then you have MVAC. I would say MVAC is the receiver then, because MVAC was able to run with this and really turn it into something. I do hope someday, I hope his father has enough time to consider this. I hope someday he does get the confession from his father that he's been holding out for.
I mean, so too.
You know, the science has spoken, the jury has spoken, everyone pretty much knows what happened in this situation. Give your son some peace. And I know what, Pele is basically saying. My dad's been lying to himself so long, he doesn't even believe that he did this anymore. Even if you thought within your heart that it wasn't true, just give your son some peace. There's no downside to it. They're not going to recharge you. You're not going to get more years for it. Just help this kid out after all he's been through. He's lost both his parents at this point.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know that I'll hold my breath for that one. I do hope it comes for him someday.
Yeah, me too.
Christy, thank you so much for all your hard work on today's episode. We really appreciate you. And I've got some other people to thank right now. Thank you, PayPal supporters Jennifer Wilson, Larissa Mertschenk, and Hillary Green. For over 6 years, we've always run limited commercial ads here on YouTube, and we can't do that without support. If you'd like to help the channel, please visit lordandarts.com. There, you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or even just buy us a coffee like JoJo recently did. We know that learning about the mechanisms that help support and find justice in these cases is important to understand the many unsolved cases we also cover, and we really appreciate your support in allowing us to continue doing that. Remember, you can get another Lord and Art story every week on the Seriously Mysterious podcast. A new episode is coming tomorrow and every Tuesday after that. Visit seriouslymysterious.com and subscribe on your favorite podcatchers. While you're here, please don't forget to subscribe below and hit that bell icon if you want to catch one of our weekly Secret Studio live shows. And of course, I'll be back with a new unsolved mystery for you on Friday, right here on the Lord and Arts channel.